Welcome back to another edition of today's episode. Today we're talking Full Circle on the show Full Circle on Max. And I watched 4 episodes of it. We'll probably concentrate more on the latter 2 since that just came out. But this is a wacky show. It's got a lot of celebrity stars in it. And where do you want to kick it off?
That's what I want to talk about first. How did this show happen? Because you have so many busy people in this cast. Timothy Olyphant this week is not only coming out with this, but Justified City of Primeval. Steven Soderbergh, the person who created or directed all 6 episodes. This isn't even his only show coming out this week. He came out with a different show called Command Z, starring Michael Cera and I think Leo Schreiber. And then not only that, you have Jharrel Jerome. He was in I'm a Virgo.
That's right.
Main series of that only came out like a month ago, and he was also in Across the Spider-Verse. And then you have just big stars in general: Zazie Beetz, Claire Danes, Dennis Quaid. So my first question for you is the way Zazie Beetz described it, it's not a who done it but a why done it. Is that a fair assessment of the first 4 episodes?
Yeah, because we do know who the ultimate villain of it is. It's just strange. Like, that's probably my biggest con in the entire show, is that you have to wrap your head around the concept that there is a crime syndicate that's run by a bunch of Guyanese individuals, mainly a matriarch. That's name is Mrs. Mahadir. Right? Savi Mahadir. And she is very superstitious because at the beginning of this series, there's a rival gang run by Edward Chung, I believe is his name, and he murders her, I believe, son, Quincy,
wow. Yeah.
right? And then it's all about how she's going to get payback for that. But instead of going after Edward Chung, she feels like the reason all this bad stuff has been happening to her gang is because of some curse that was put on her husband 20 years back. And so she...
Cursed by who?
We're not entirely clear on who cursed him or why. It's just all because of this circle. And that's apparently in Guyana, the circle is a very symbolic, ritualistic symbol. And so it's like it can either hold good things or it can hold bad things.
Hence the name, okay.
Yes, yeah. And even the money that they're asking for at one point is like $314,159, which comes out to pi, 3.14159. Yeah. So, but getting back to her idea is that she wants to break this curse by going after the celebrity chef who we don't know why his family is involved at all. They're just this high-class family. Derek and Sam are the mom and the dad, played by Claire Danes and Timothy Olyphant. And there you have their son, Jared. And so Mrs. Mahadir says, go kidnap Jared, their son. They're like 16-year-old kid. And then bring him to Washington Square Park. Very populated, even in the middle of the night.
Public.
Yes, and so bring him there and then threaten to shoot him unless they bring the money to us.
Threaten to shoot him in front of all these different people that are there?
Well, he's in one of those carts that people sell and distribute the waters and stuff in. So anyways, the full first episode is about how they botched this entire kidnapping, and part of the reason is because most of the gang members have reservations about kidnapping a kid, and although they are a crime syndicate and they are like part of the insurance agency where they murder people, murder like street urchins or people who have like money on their life insurance, and then they get money that way. But they're not used to going to like a high class hotel or apartment studio and taking a kid. That's just not in their like repertoire. So a lot of people are questioning it. A lot of people are trying to actually save the kid. The characters that we follow, Natalie and Luis and Javier, who all come from Guyana and actually want to go back because they realize they've gotten themselves in over their head. Yeah, they're all like plotting in different ways to help save Jared, but it ends up they don't even kidnap Jared. They end up kidnapping Jared's lookalike because Jared actually has sort of a stalker, but his stalker is his stepbrother. See, so Timothy Olyphant,
his stepbrother.
Timothy Olyphant married into the Chef Jeff's family, and Chef Jeff is not Denzel Washington, Dennis Quaid. All right, so yeah, and so he's very rich, and Claire Danes plays like one of his business managers / lawyer lady.
Her name is Sam Brown in the show.
Yes, her name is Sam Brown, and she's got like her own secrets from the past that connect to Guyana, but her husband also has secrets, Derek. Derek's secret is that he had a illegitimate child with a woman right before he was about to get married to Sam 16 years previously. So he's kind of figured it out throughout the course of the kidnapping that the kid that the people kidnapped, the Guyanese like mafia has kidnapped, is actually Nicholas, who is kind of obsessed with wanting Jared's life. And that's why he was dressed up as Jared and had lured Jared out to go hang out with him. And so Jared watched the kidnapping happen, went home in the middle of the kidnappers talking to the family and threatening to kill their son. So it was kind of funny. So having Jim Gaffigan
because he walks in during
everybody's like, and we don't actually see who got kidnapped until that point. So we didn't, when Jared walked in, it was really funny. Yeah. So that's all first episode
Steven,
stuff.
what you say about it being strange and even the dark humor of it, that's obviously no stranger to Steven Soderbergh. Anyone who's a major cinephile knows who he is. He did all of the 3 Ocean films, Traffic, which I think was nominated for Academy Awards. The Informant.
That was Crash.
The Informant, Contagion, Magic Mike, Side Effects, Behind the Candelabra, had a quick retirement back in, I think, like 2012, 2013, then came back with Logan Lucky. But then you have Ed Solomon. He's the one that created this show, and his writing credits are very diverse. He wrote all 3 Bill and Ted's movies. He did Now You See Me, both the first Men in Black, married to the daughter of John Cleese's daughter, and then he even wrote Charlie's Angel, which was directed by McGee, the Super Mario Brothers film, the 1993 version.
Oh, wow.
3 episodes of Laverne and Shirley, and then he even wrote a series called Mosaic, which was definitely a different, I'd never seen anything like it. It was a series that took place on an app, but what you're talking about with like the way that this show is structured, it's supposed to follow so many different people's POV.
Well, at first it just sounds like it's a normal kidnapping show, kind of like that Apple series we did a long time ago. Started with an S, had the guy from The Americans in it, who's the FBI guy.
I think it was like Suspicion or something.
Suspicion. That sounds close enough. Yeah, that show dealt with a kidnapping, and we didn't know who did it, and there were like 6 different characters that we followed. This kind of follows that same idea that there's no central main character, and so we see the timeline split off to every single person, and whoever constructed, and that might be the showrunner, that might be who you're talking about, just like everybody has their own like direction that they're going. Like I feel like a lot of times you watch a show and you see it through one person's idea or narrative, and so it's very easy to kind of just make up what you think other people are doing at the same time. Mm-hmm. No, everybody is doing something rather different, and some people are kind of stepping on each other's toes and actually like reverse doing what the other people are doing. So you're seeing like Javier, he's been caught up by the Postal Service, and the Postal Service here, they're not delivering mail. They're actually part of like the FBI, or they're like an offset organization that works in New York. I'm sure they're real. But Zazie Beetz plays one of the agents, and she's like a hard stickler. She goes in, she asks questions. She doesn't care whose feathers she ruffles. She doesn't care about her boss at all. In fact, she hates him. That's Jim Gaffigan's character, Manny. Uh-huh. And Manny does have some dirt in his past that he doesn't want getting out, but it's not revealed until the 4th episode that it actually has to do with the Guyana stuff. So he's probably going to get fired. He is sort of a villain. Like before I thought maybe he was just kind of like not great at his job, but no, he's probably going to go down for this. But Zazie Beetz' character is probably my favorite, even with the stuff with her relationship that kind of is just like a side storyline, because it just shows her attitude. She has I think she's been diagnosed but not diagnosed. Does that make sense? Like it was written in a report but undiagnosed, with borderline like a personality disorder or something. Uh-huh. And so her boss actually didn't send the report over because he thought that she was a great agent, but once she started pointing the finger at him, that's when he sent it over. So that ball is yet to drop. Like in the next episode, she's probably going to get fired from the agency, but she's such like a maverick, kind of a uncontrollable variable, that she's probably going to continue the investigation on herself, or like by herself. And she's also sort of playing the Claire Danes role from Homeland. So seeing Claire Danes and her act together and kind of play opposites is really interesting. And also like Zazie Beetz is great in this show. The favorite character by far.
Okay, yeah, because I know that she was pretty isolated on set, which is how she described Mel Harmony in general anyways in the first 4 episodes. When it came to information, though, and so much of it having to be thrown at the viewer, Ed Solomon and Steven Soderbergh, very late into post-production, were still having fights about how they were going to, like, rearranging scenes and how they were going to explain what happened where. And it seems like, does it come across...
It's a big old puzzle that they just need to keep adding pieces to. And yeah, you're right. They know what the middle part of the puzzle looks like because we know who the villains are. We just don't know why. So once we spread out the rest of the puzzle, then we're going to be able to see the full, like, why their arms are where they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, they did say at the very end of the series, some reviews were talking about how it came across a little disappointing because you don't get answers, like, to everything. But I know...
It feels like they've been giving us answers along the way. It feels like, for instance, they dropped the name Charisse, really early on, and we were like, who the hell is Charisse? Turns out Charisse is Derek's illegitimate baby mama, the one who he had and Nicholas, the kid who's like kind of crazy himself. The one who's like
the one who was actually kidnapped,
a little obsessive with the idea of like taking over Jared's life. He's right now been pulled away by Natalie and Luis, two of the ex-gang members of the Mahabir gang. She was her masseuse, and that was her brother. They both came over from Guyana, and they're protecting Nicholas, but they've just learned that Nicholas isn't Jared. And so now they are thinking about blackmailing Timothy Oliphant's character, Derek, again, because they knew that he wanted to keep that a secret. But the trouble is, Derek has already told Sam about the kid because Zazie Beetz' character, Mel, has already told Sam about her husband having secrets.
This has to come across as convoluted.
It's convoluted. Overall, the show it feels like an Apple show. It takes place in New York. You've got, even though I'm saying there's a lot of characters, it does feel like there's a finite amount of them. Like we've met them all at this point. I'm not going to, and then the storylines, it just feels like it's moving. So I will give the show a positive review. But again, you also have to swallow the huge pill that the reason that this Guyana gang is going after the kid so hard is because of a curse. I just don't buy that.
I'm not going to give it a pass for that because I haven't seen it anyways. But even if I were watching it, but that's Steven Soderbergh's. That's kind of like the things that he writes. He always writes those like weird characters that like maybe believe something that they shouldn't.
But if it's the top person on the food chain, like if it's the main godfather, you have all her people around her second guessing her and saying, this doesn't make any sense. Please tell us about this plan. This can't be a curse. That's the reason why it's backfiring on her so much. If she really just wanted to kill this kid, normally she could. But instead, she's listening to these like weird soothsayers who are telling her things. And it also doesn't make sense why like the chef, Jeff, who is also a funny character, Dennis Quaid, who has a ponytail and literally doesn't know what he's talking about half the time. He's playing chess with the guy who's actually partially involved in the kidnapping. And he just doesn't know it.
It's one of those scenes. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but that guy has a heart attack within the first episode. So there's a bunch of different variables floating around, and like if we wanted to get into the nitty-gritty of every single plot, I just feel like that would be counterintuitive. Overall, the show for me deserves, I would say, probably between a 6 or 7 out of 10, depending on whether or not you're going to give it that leeway with the main villains. The other storyline that I'm happy that they've reserved to the side, because I'm so tired of like the kid who was supposed to be kidnapped. I was afraid we were going to get a lot of Jared.
Yes,
right. I thought we were going to get like Jared decided that he wanted to then go talk to the Guyanese himself. No, what ends up happening is they have like a friend, an ex-cop named Joey, who has a golden retriever. And in the first episode, when he thinks that Jared has been kidnapped, he shows up to try to help. That's when Jared comes in. Joey, and Jared, they head off to a cabin, and I'm so happy that they've just left them in that cabin, not doing anything, because it would be so annoying if we had to just watch Jared get himself into trouble.
I'm just not realizing there's a lot of black comedy in the fact that Nicholas wanted to be Jared, right? And then he ends up being kidnapped because they
Dramatic
think that
irony?
he is Jared.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Almost kind of like karma in that sense.
But he doesn't care. He's really happy about it. Like he didn't want to go home necessarily because he knew that would just pull the cover over everything. He wanted people to think that he was Jared. So, like, the kid there's something wrong with him, as Natalie said. Like, she knows.
The show overall has a 6.2 on IMDb and has an 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the audience score is kind of low. It has a 58%. So, when you're talking about a 6 or 7 and falling kind of in between that, I think a lot of people agree with you. And even when I was doing reviews just on Rotten Tomatoes, even though it has an 82%, I would say they're more mixed reviews, because it seemed like every single tomato meter was talking about how there was just too much going on in the show. And also,
so much going on
that it was ultimately frustrating. That's what The Guardian said, and they gave it a 3 out of 5 star review.
I believe that that's a perfectly credible review, because the thing about Zazie Beetz' character is it's supposed to push you in the wrong way. Like, it's supposed to make you kind of annoyed with her. But I see what they wrote with her. Like, her character is a super genius, but the way that she's a super genius is she's super annoying. She comes into every conversation she can, and she immediately starts asking the questions that are impolite to ask. And then she doesn't judge you off what you say. She just judges off your initial reaction to it. And so that annoys everybody in the series. It probably annoys a lot of the audience members, but it makes her acting seem super good. And I'm not even a huge fan of her acting in most of the seasons of Atlanta, because she's kind of just off in the corner and she's not doing much. In
she's a secondary character.
Yeah, even in the episodes where she like takes over, her character was just so different than what it had been previously in the series, where in this it's like she's a known quantity, she's a known wild card, and I'm really happy with it. And Jim Gaffigan being evil, like I'm happy with that too, because it's when comedians are able to really show their colors and do cool things with them. Dennis Quaid isn't overtaking the thing, like he's not acting like a Trump or an egomaniac. He's not coming in there and being like the center of attention.
Well, you would think that he would be. I mean, Dennis Quaid, even though this has a lot of famous people, is like the most famous person out of this cast. But I think that he was cast last because in September of 2022, which is when they ended up filming this thing on location in NYC, I think that he was the last person that they were able to get for this series.
I think, he doesn't necessarily have to be there. He's not in a lot of scenes. He's mostly in the promotional photos on the back for Chef Jeff. His brother, he screwed over, I think, 20 years earlier, and that was part of the Guyana thing. Mm-hmm. Like, he had been paying off politicians or something for one reason or another. We aren't 100% clear on why yet. But that's why he's connected, and that's why his grandson was targeted.
I was glad to see that this wasn't an anthology series, because when I saw how many famous people there were, they're always there for like an anthology series, like a one-off, like Modern Love or Solos or anything like that. I know that it was inspired off of the 60s film, I believe, High and Low, starring the legendary Toshiro Mifune, the Japanese actor in Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, and Rashomon.
Cool.
But also, it originally started out as a 586-page script, and then Ed Solomon, Steven Soderbergh, they like ended up whittling it down to 400 pages, and then they were even thinking about doing what they did with Mosaic, because that series, it wasn't a choose your own adventure, but you could follow the perspective of different characters over the same event.
Yeah.
And they were thinking about doing it with this, but then they were like, you know what, we're going to scrap that idea. Ed Solomon wasn't exactly happy about that, because he had already written 175 pages with that in mind. But this show, I think it's been in like production for a couple of years now, at least the idea has, and then they were able to finally come out with it.
And I haven't even talked about like all my favorite characters. Again, Javier, he did the stupidest move at the end because he was kind of pulled into witness protection. Like, Zazie Beetz got really tired of dealing with his like non-calling her. Mm-hmm. There's one plot hole with her where she is like where she's going on crazy investigation mode, trying to figure out what happened with the kidnapping. She knows that her source, Javier, kind of misled her about the night of the kidnapping. And so when everybody's like pressing her on that, instead of just calling him, she waits like days and interviews everybody else, but she never picks up the phone or goes to him until way later on, and it doesn't make any sense. But when she finally does, she pulls him, she brings him into a hotel room, and she says, like, she puts an ankle monitor on him, and the Guyana group, they know that someone has leaked information, and they even killed the guy who they thought it was, who it ended up not being. And so they want Javier dead. They also want Natalie and her brother Luis dead, because they know that the person they ended up killing was no one. Yeah. They ended up killing a masseuse model. Like, they shot it.
That's where the masseuse comes into play. Yeah, because I read something about that.
But the point is, at the very end of the fourth episode, the big cliffhanger is that Javier stupidly calls his girlfriend, who he's been talking to for since he's gone to America, and they just follow the girlfriend to the hotel room, bust open the door, and they're about to kill Javier when the episode ends. Because he takes them to the witness protection. She says, Zazie Beetz' character is like, don't call anyone, and he immediately calls someone, and then they share a meal together. The other thing is Garman's character, who seems like the more reasonable of the leaders of the group. He's the one who Mrs. Mahadir, like the second in command, who she kind of set aside while she's doing this whole kidnapping plot. He's the one who's like, I also want to go back to Guyana. I want to get out of here. I'm tired of this life. And he seems like a really reasonable fellow out of all the crime people.
Yeah.
And then you also have Edward Chung, who, remember, he was the one who kicked this all off by murdering someone, right? Uh-huh. And so what he did was he murdered her son. He found the money that the guy had been stealing, which was the reason he murdered him, but he found a ton more than he was expecting. And so then it linked back to this casino, and the casino is connected to Chef Jeff, who also has a ton of money at that casino. And the casino storyline is hilarious too, because the guys working at the casino are kind of like the ones from Twin Peaks, where yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They're goofy. They're funny.
The dumb characters.
Or from Casino, the movie. Like, it just seems like there's a bunch of mobs, and even Edward Chung wants to turn in the Natalie and Luis and whoever else she might have with her back to Mrs. Mahadir, because they believe in the curse, but they also want to like make amends and stuff. It's also messy. I don't recommend it if you're not into that type of thing where what I've said just goes completely over your head, I don't blame you.
Are you going to watch the rest of the series? Because it's only 6 episodes and it's a miniseries, so it's the final 2 episodes.
Yeah, I wouldn't have if we had only done the first 2 episodes. It's just that I'm already, 60%, 70%, 80% the way through now.
Most of the way through.
Yeah. So I just got 2 more episodes to go, and then I'll know what's up. But yeah, the only character I wish got more screen time was that golden retriever. And I'll relay again that I never knew that the postal inspectors were like a thing that you should be afraid of. But yeah, they'll come after you, and they'll come after you hard.
I know that the premiere of the show was actually in New York City. It was a movie premiere. So it fitting the same narrative of wanting to kind of be a 10-hour movie, like Ed Solomon said, is the way that they decided to end it. But do you have anything else?
The Summer I Turned Pretty was also a 2-hour premiere.
Yeah, for some reason they're doing it in movie theaters nowadays.
I think it's just extra promotion, and it's like there's not as many movies coming out with the whole writer's strike and Hollywood being the way it is right now. I'm surprised when you said that there was another Steven Soderbergh show out right now.
It's on his own website, and I think you have to pay like $8 just to see it.
You have to have a Soderbergh a subscription?
Something like that, yeah.
Nice. That would be like Soderbergh versus Netflix. Okay. Yeah, well, thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.